Sutra Karma Law Potential. Achieve such a state of affairs that a favorable outcome is inevitable. We seek the potential inherent in the configuration of events rather than fighting against it. How do you achieve your goal? You can take a direct approach, smashing everything in your way. This is the Western perspective on achieving a goal, which is very energy-consuming. Alternatively, you can use the current situation and the potential it holds in such a way that what you want to achieve becomes inevitable. For example, if you seek a relationship, first you need to understand what you need to do to ensure that people don't pass you by and notice you. You shouldn't actively pull someone toward you. Instead, you can simply create a situation where the right people are naturally drawn to you. This is the Eastern approach. A good example that illustrates the difference between Eastern and Western worldviews and thinking can be imagined as follows: there is a person sitting in the corner, and we need to make sure they move to another corner and stay there for several hours. What would a Westerner do when faced with this task? They would immediately start calculating the person's weight, the effort needed to move them, what if they resist, and how to fix them in the new position. How would someone with an Eastern mindset handle the situation? For example, they might observe the situation carefully and realize that it is cold in the room. And it's cold for both them and the person. So, they gather firewood and start a fire in the desired corner. It becomes warm there, and the person will naturally move and stay as long as the fire is maintained. The fool sulks, but the wise person always thinks things through. Sun Tzu also said, "You must create a state of affairs where a favorable outcome for you is inevitable." In physics, systems with many particles and connections are described by an equation of state that considers various parameters: temperature, pressure, volume, chemical potential, and so on. By changing the state of individual parameters, you can alter the overall state of the system. To do this, you need to understand how the parameters influence each other and the system. The same laws apply in society. It is much more efficient to create the right configuration that will automatically initiate the processes we need, i.e., change the cause of the events, than to fight the consequences of a configuration that doesn't meet our goals. Preference for evolution over revolution is embedded in nature itself. All living organisms are driven by the fundamental goals of survival and reproduction. These goals are achieved in various ways. Evolution is one such method of creating, forming, and protecting living beings, and the nervous system was chosen as the foundation for evolutionary transformations. The nervous system acts as a hypothetical mirror of behavior and an animal's real possibilities. However, it is not just a mirror but also the structural basis of all behavior. The nervous system undergoes relatively slow structural changes, which could not occur outside of specific conditions. Such conditions involve an environment where unusual sensory organs or deep associative analysis of unusual conditions would be necessary. By analyzing neurological patterns of evolution, we can conclude that evolution did not fight against previous or newly formed configurations but sought the potential within them. The diversity of the animal world and their adaptive reactions confirm this. Man is a melancholy creature, wasting his potential in vain. I get on a crowded bus, look at the people, and I am miserable because I feel like there is something wrong with them. Not because they lack God, or because they are sober. There is something else off. To break free, you need a truly daring, inventive soul. Charles Bukowski. Don't blame the cat when the cheese is eaten. Humans have much more complex needs than just survival and reproduction. We are constantly in search of the meaning of our existence and set new goals for ourselves. However, few realize that the process of successfully meeting our needs largely depends on individual characteristics, particularly the configuration of our brain. Research in human physiology has shown that individual typological features are determined by the functional asymmetry of the brain, whether the right or left hemisphere is more dominant. Numerous experiments have demonstrated that the integrative activity of each hemisphere has its specificity. The left hemisphere is functionally linked to the use of verbal symbols, logic, and analysis, while the right hemisphere is linked to the perception of visual, spatial, and kinesthetic stimuli, as well as the perception of music. This has been termed propositional and oppositional thinking, respectively. This fact was noted by I.P. Pavlov, who, based on the dominant properties of the hemispheres or their balance, identified two types of higher nervous activity in humans, intellectual and artistic. People with a dominant right hemisphere belong to the artistic type, characterized by vivid visual and auditory perceptions of the world. This group includes most artists and musicians. Those with a dominant left hemisphere excel at logical constructions and abstract thinking, scientists and philosophers. The majority of humanity falls into the so-called mixed type, where both intellectual and artistic traits are present but not strongly expressed. There is also a fourth typological variant, those rare individuals with equally developed hemispheres. Pavlov attributed genius figures like Leonardo da Vinci to this category, who were capable of both artistic and scientific creativity. It's useless to bolt the door after the horse is stolen. Don't struggle against the configuration of your brain and go against nature by forcing yourself to work with numbers if your calling is music or literature. It's much more effective to identify and use the potential that is inherent in you. French thinker Pierre Bourdieu called this potential symbolic capital. In his view, it is the power that our knowledge and skills possess when we find the right field for their application. The importance of studying and utilizing the potential within a given configuration was also understood by the famous German philosopher and ideologist Karl Marx, who is credited with the idea of structural determination. The essence of this concept is that every event is caused not by another single event but by the entire set of social events, which is only possible in its interconnectedness. Thus, society as a system is the cause of individual events. Marx saw the dependence of individual economic phenomena on the functioning of the entire capitalist economic system. In his political theory, he also believed that it was impossible to achieve qualitative changes in the living conditions of workers through individual social concessions, such as raising wages or reducing the workday. In his view, improving the workers' situation could only be achieved by changing the entire social structure, both the base, economic relations, and the superstructure, politics, culture, law, morality, etc. This became the justification for his theory of revolution. Changing the system as a whole is necessary, and piecemeal changes are impossible. It's no use putting on a cloak after the rain. People attract what they actively reject because they emit mental energy on the frequency of their aversion, and in addition, they create an excessive potential. Life often brings together people who are completely different and seem unsuitable for each other. This is because equilibrium forces, by colliding people with opposing potentials, seek to neutralize them. Vadim Zeland. The idea of structural determinism took on clear form in the philosophy of structuralism, notably in the works of Louis Althusser, which emerged in post-war France largely as a reinterpretation of Marxism. However, the idea of structural determinism truly developed in the works of the French philosopher, anthropologist and ethnologist Claude Lévi-Strauss. In structuralism, Marx's idea of structural determinism took on a fatalistic tone. We are unable to influence structures, instead, they wholly determine our behavior. Even for Marx, humans were capable of becoming creators of history by relying on their understanding of social structures. Humans must utilize the potential embedded in social structures, otherwise, this potential will not be realized. The German philosopher and sociologist George Simmel also claimed that the whole dominates over the parts in social life. Society appears as a cosmos which, though incredibly diverse in its existence and motion, allows each point to retain its distinctiveness only through the invariability of the structure of the whole. In other words, we can harness various societal resources and opportunities, receiving certain guarantees of stability, initially embedded in the concept of human society. By relying on this harmony of the whole, we can also achieve internal harmony. This is also reflected in world religions. According to Islam, Allah created man from nothing and, out of His mercy, endowed him with numerous gifts, elevating him above many of His creations by making him His vicegerent on earth. Over time, people have divided into those who are content and grateful to Allah, and those who are ungrateful and insatiable. Grateful people appreciate what they have. They know how to use their gifts in accordance with the opportunities presented and build their lives in harmony, understanding that the Almighty has blessed them with what they currently need. A grateful heart invites contentment and Allah's blessings, seeing and responding to the signs of its Lord. Thus, grateful believers achieve success. If you are grateful, I will surely increase you in favor. Quran 14:7. A grateful person understands that all goodness comes from the Creator of the heavens and earth. In contrast, the ungrateful do not see Allah's signs and do not understand what they should do or in what direction to move. They are plagued by doubts, sadness, and disappointment with life, dissatisfied with the blessings Allah has given them. As a result, such people do not value what they have and fail to thank the Almighty for His gifts and mercy. Regarding them, a hadith says, if one of Adam's sons had 2 valleys filled with herds, he would desire a third. Muslim 1048. Such people are insatiable, always wanting more. By showing ingratitude, they bring upon themselves Allah's displeasure, followed by punishment. If you are ungrateful, surely my punishment is severe. Quran 14:7. A talented person, favored by Allah, knows how to use what they have in the moment, achieving beauty and perfection. The hadith mentioned earlier emphasizes rejoicing in what we have and making use of each gift at the right time. In Christian doctrine, right after the fall of the first humans, life on earth took on a distorted and ugly nature, Galatians 3:24. But God did not destroy the world as if it were a draft and create it anew. Instead, He acted according to the current situation, using signs, the forces of nature, angels, and even animals as instruments of His divine will and to correct the unfolding situation. He delivered a symbolic prophecy to Adam and Eve about the future coming of the Savior, who would free people from the devil's power. The path to Christ's birth was long, and in fact, the entire Old Testament with its dramas, bloody tragedies, terrible calamities, and feats of faith, as the Apostle Paul says, was our tutor nanny to bring us to Christ. God used any available material, any situation and human destiny, to guide humanity toward the cherished goal and the fulfillment of His, God's, plan for humanity. My wealth lies in the certainty that I will be able to see and use the potential in any situation. Behind every storm cloud, a rainbow awaits me. Brad Jensen. Braiding hair when it has already fallen out. For Kabbalists, an important potential for personal development is the collective mind, formed by modern means of communication that unite individual consciousnesses and enrich each with the knowledge of the collective unconscious. Moreover, Michael Lettman believes that in the future, Kabbalah will help manage this potential for the benefit of all humanity. As a result of studying universal intelligence, the world will come to understand the necessity of full interaction among all people within a single system and will reveal this system of our connection, and then, to understand this system of connection, they will need Kabbalah as a science of the general network governing all of nature. This governing network is the system of higher worlds, i.e., the forces of connection that we study in the science of Kabbalah. In other words, by influencing the collective mind, one can change the social context in the desired direction and guide each person's consciousness toward constructive self-improvement. The realization of potential inherent in the world and in humans is a very important concept in Buddhism. It's no coincidence that a parable states that shortly after enlightenment, Buddha had a vision in which humanity appeared before him as a multitude of lotus flowers. Some lotuses were still hidden under a layer of mud, others were already breaking through it, and some were in full bloom. In other words, he understood that all people have the potential to realize their capabilities, and some only need a little help to do so. Therefore, Buddha decided to pass on his teachings, and the entire content of Buddhism can be seen as an attempt to bring this vision to life to help all people cultivate the flower of enlightenment within themselves. In all difficult situations, it is important to remember, a wise head has 100 hands. Digging a well when the house is on fire. Potential is not only what is inherently embedded in us but also our drive for growth, a set of abilities that help us evolve and direct our efforts toward new tasks and functions. Every person is given a specific set of abilities that allows them to grow further depending on their desires and goals. Personal potential includes several key elements: motivation, the ability to learn, qualities that facilitate communication between people, as well as existing knowledge and experience. This configuration of qualities enables a person to engage in activities with relative freedom from the conditions set by these activities, both external and internal. Hegel once wrote, "Circumstances and motives dominate a person only to the extent that he allows them to." In other words, a person, based on their potential, is capable of not allowing circumstances to dominate them. D. A. Leontiev writes, "Personality is not a natural object, it is what a person makes of themselves in the process of individual development." Each individual, based on their inner criteria and guidelines, can act effectively even against the backdrop of external pressure and constantly changing conditions. Considering the inherent human ability to learn and enrich their experience, it becomes clear that we are constantly changing, growing, and developing in our capabilities. We not only adapt to external circumstances but also know how to create the necessary conditions based on our potential. Everyone has the freedom to choose whether to use their inner resources for self-development and to achieve their goals, or to let external circumstances control their lives. A person fears death the most when they live the least fulfilling life and when their potential remains unrealized. Irvin Yalom. A cane is needed before the fall.